the interim chairman of the ECCL. I'd like to welcome you to the 176th meeting of the ECCL. We're almost 15 years, we are 15 years old. We didn't have meetings in July for a number of years, so 180 is that 15-year mark. But in any case, we always start out by asking people who are here for the first time to introduce themselves. Are there any of you who are like that? Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, Estero. Thank you very much for showing up. I am Jim Weeks, Weeks Fish Camp. I am driving force behind to keep the camp open to the public substantially. We need a big enough public action.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your coming and announcing that. Others, as we're going down the other side of the room? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
I'd like to introduce Meg Bogdanova. She lives in the States here in Estero.
Hi. Good to have you here. I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, I'm Alex Greenwood. I have the Lee Health leaders here, most of them for the first time today, but they'll be introducing themselves in a few minutes.
Thank you, Alex. Moving right around the room, anybody else on the, there we go.
I'm Taylor.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Taylor Krug. I'm representing the Conservancy of Southwest Florida today.
Good to have you here. Thank you.
Good morning, Christina Ramo with Commissioner Pendergrass's office. He couldn't be here this morning, so he sent me on his behalf and looks forward to continuing to work with you guys.
Thank you.
I'm Ross McIntosh. This is Deborah Belford. We live and work at Coconut Point. We've been on your mailing list, and today you have a particularly interesting agenda, so we're here to participate.
Good to have you here. We're interested in your feedback. Yeah. You
I
want
was
to say?
just communicating to let them know we have 4 more chairs up there.
Okay. We do have places to sit here at the table. Anybody wants to get a higher price seat, they're not really that expensive. So with that, appreciate that. The Chief Vanderbrook from Estero tells me that he's up in the Panhandle fighting the problems with Michael. So he's not here this morning, but Rich, David, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chief Camberry with St. Carlos Park Fire District, so pleasure to be able to come down here and visit. I didn't get a chance to give an email back, but yes, just similarly, the Estero Fire District, St. Carlos Park Fire District has members on both the Florida Task Force 6 Urban Search and Rescue Team. Their swift water component was sent to the Panhandle, as well as engine strike teams. So personnel from both of our districts have joined with other member agencies from Lee County and are in the Panhandle currently working with that at this time. Also, October is Fire Prevention Month, so both entities are out to our schools and daycares, bringing fire prevention to our children and helping them out with that process. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to ask or answer.
Go back to it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Skipped over the Pledge of Allegiance, Mark.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to call on Councilman John McLean for the village report. John? Thank you. Good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Before I start, I'd like to thank Mr. Weeks for showing up. I speak as an individual. I'm a boater and a kayaker, and having access to that part of the Estero Bay is critically important to me individually, but I think all of Estero also, to keep that open for us to have that kind of access. So thank you for showing up here. I've got a few things I'd like to talk about today, and I'll just go through them. I'm going to talk a little bit about Estero Parkway, talk a little bit about Hertz Arena and their color scheme, talk a little bit about the Caloosahatchee water releases and the impact that has on us, and then talk about a potential ordinance that we're going to have for the securing of our gas station pumps so you don't have credit card fraud going on. So talk a little bit about Estero Parkway. I'm the liaison for that, and we've been working on Estero Parkway, the planning for that, for several months. And being an ex-business guy, I like to see things move a little bit quicker, but with rules and regulations within cities and counties, you have to go through a process, and our engineers that we use go through the process as if this was a major, development effort. It is 1.8 miles long, and we've looked at a lot of alternatives. Council's been involved in that process. As some of you may know, we've gone through putting in one roundabout, had some issues with that. We went to the far extreme to go to 3 roundabouts on it, and that was probably a little bit too much. So we've now come back to pretty much a mill and overlay of the existing road. We're going to put in 7-foot bike lanes, which is going to be in harmony with what we're doing with Corkscrew going out towards Bellaterra and the like. We'll have 7-foot. That's the new standard for Florida, which happens to have the highest kill rate on bicycles anywhere in the country. So some people think a 7-foot bike lane is a little excessive, but being a biker myself, I can tell you that 7 feet will give you a little more comfort zone. It won't solve everything, but it'll sure help in there. So this coming Wednesday, the 17th, the council is going to look at the work that our engineers have been doing. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it all. I've seen the preliminaries of it, but I haven't seen the presentation yet. But I can tell you that we're going to get the account, because it's a workshop, it's not a voting thing. They've already approved moving forward with it. We're just giving them an update on preliminary landscaping and I think the final roadscape that we're going to have in there. So if all goes well with the council, which I'm expecting it will be, I expect that planning, budgeting, final budgeting, bidding, that we will probably start the project in the April-May timeframe of next year with a completion probably towards the end of the year. One area that we don't have fully laid out is the lighting along Estero Parkway. Virtually there's no lighting there at all, and there's some lights as you go into the entrances to the developments. If any of you use Estero Parkway now, if you come off of 41, which is beautifully lit now, I think if any of you gone down there at night, all the lights throughout Estero are on, and it's nicely lit. I'm not advocating that we do Estero Parkway anywhere near that, but I do believe that I'd like to see us incorporate some lighting within Estero Parkway so that you don't have this very bright 41, and as you turn onto into Estero Parkway, it's kind of a dark hole. And so I may need your help and others to say, hey, council, step up. We need to include within the budget, and I think we can do it within the budget number, appropriate lighting for Estero Parkway, and it may be along the walkways that we're going to have on both sides of the area. So Estero Parkway is moving along, and I think when it's done, I think it's going to look very nice and it'll be a nice enhancement to all of Estero. Hertz Arena, I'm not sure if all of your Germain Arena is going to be, I don't think it's done yet, but Hertz Arena is going to take over the sponsorship of that. And they've been in the paper prior to coming to our design review board, and I think all of you have seen the picture of their concept for it. It's hard to miss. So the process is a little bit messed up, and I listened to the design review board here, it was about 2 weeks ago, and Hertz came in and they made their presentation with the 100% yellow building, and there was a lot of public there, and I think the ECCL may have been responsible to get people there. I can tell you, any of you who listened to it, you had heard it also, is that either 99 or 100% of the people there said, you know, you can have your logo, it can be yellow, but let's not have a total yellow building in there. So there was a lot of exchange back and forth, and that's the way the design review board should work. And they left indicating to the Hertz representatives there that we'd like to have you come back, think about this, listen to what we've said to you as a design review board, and the public's concerns and give us another proposal. So I expect that that process is going to go on for a period of time, depending on how Hertz responds to this. Just for point of clarity, it's in the paper, and I've tried to correct that. The indication has been that the village of Estero approved the design of their headquarters they have on 41 there. That's not true because we weren't a village at that point. It was involved, and I think the ECCL was involved with Lee County. There were some compromises, but we have standards within Estero. And my feeling is we need to have everybody comply with those standards to maintain the culture and the look that we want within this area. And if we start making exceptions, we lose our ability to control what's going on in here. So I, as one individual from the council, I'm very adamant that we maintain those standards for anybody. So that's Hertz Arena. The Caloosahatchee Water Releases. Now, this is in the paper. It's in the news all the time. I want to let you know up front, I'm speaking as an individual person as part of the council, but and also want to let you know that I'm not an expert scientist in everything that's going on with all the releases and all that, but I want to kind of, in a layman's terms, talk to you about an effort that the Estero is getting behind. The mayor of Sanibel, Mayor Rain, I think he's been here before, approached the council a week and a half ago, and asked us to join his effort along with all the other mayors within Lee County to support his initiative, which I think is soundly based. And it doesn't deal with all the releases from Caloosahatchee. It doesn't deal with the storage areas that are going to be like in 2022. It's really something that can happen within the next 6 months or so. And what his proposal basically is saying that we need to maintain the estuary that's involved in there. In order to do that, you have to balance the salinity levels in the river. And in the dry seasons, what's been happening in the last few years is we're not getting much, if any, releases from Lake O to maintain our salinity. And the impact of that to the ecosystem is that our tape grass that is vital for our fish habitats and the whole ecosystem are dying out. And if that happens, it has serious consequences. And what happened just recently, within, let's say, the last month or so, I don't have the exact date, is the South Florida Water Management District developed new standards for releasing water from Lake O going down the Caloosahatchee River, which are really going to be impacted once they put in dams and improve the dam, and they put in areas that's based on to be implemented in 2022. And what the mayor in this effort is looking at is there's just been, by the Florida environmental people, have just put in are in the process of putting in 6 new water monitoring stations along the Caloosahatchee River. And this effort would allow us to use that data to find out where the releases are going. Is it sufficient to maintain the tape grass and keep the ecological system healthy? And then develop new standards that allow us to maintain a good balance in there and not develop artificial numbers based on other scientific data. And to give credit to South Florida Water Management District, they did use scientific data. Their data, however, was based on species that are not influenced as much as tape grass, and therefore salinity levels didn't affect them. And so if you increase water flows or decrease them, didn't have as much impact. So we were trying to, I think the mayor is trying to use a different standard, which makes sense because it's so important to the environment, and use that as a basis. So he's asking for a trial, monitor it for a while, and then establish what the releases should be. So it's complex, and what can you do? I think you should be reading up on this and take an active position in going back to Southwest Florida Management District and the more voices they hear from, I think the better the opportunity. And we all know, the red tide's part of that. We all need to get a hold of that, and there is some good progress in there. I didn't see in the paper this morning, but our federal government is stepping up and putting a lot of money in there. So I think there's some hope, but that hope is going to be, several years out. And this effort could help, in the next 6 months to a year. So that's a layman's expression of what I think is going on there. Last time I want to talk about was just a Estero retail pump. We had a workshop a week ago at the council, and everybody's aware of the skimmers and scammers that are going. You go to a gas station, you put your credit card in there, and your data's gone, and pretty soon you're getting charges, and you have to go through all the work to do that. So a pretty simple fix. There's several relatively simple fixes, of which the workshop, the council members all were positive in saying, let's develop an ordinance, and then that ordinance is in the process of being developed right now. It's not going to be on next week's agenda, probably be the following week, an ordinance that will require all gas stations within Estero, and there's either 6 or 7 of them, I don't know how many pumps, to incorporate these new locking devices. And those of you that are not familiar with it, all the pumps have locks on them. Unfortunately, the pump today, all those locks are pretty much universal. So evidently, I've heard that you can go online on the internet, and you can actually buy these keys, and that's how they go in. They open the thing up, and they put their thing in, and it's done. So we're asking, pretty simple, put in some new locks, so that somebody can't get a master. Those locks will be unique to your station. It can be used for all 6, 10 gas pumps that you have, but it's unique to your station. There's other ways you can do it, but our ordinance is going to allow a broad interpretation of that, and I think that's going to be good. As the mayor stated at our meeting, wouldn't it be great to advertise that you can come and buy gas in Estero, and you don't have a worry about losing your credit card information. But it's not a joke. It's very serious, and I'm sure we will do it. And I hope, and Naples is actually in the process of working on that also. So hopefully we can secure that, going into the future. So that's all I've got. Anybody have any questions? I'll try to answer, but if not, thank you much for allowing me to be here.
Well, thank you, Ben. Appreciate your presentation. And you preceded James Evans, who's here from Sanibel, to talk about the technical aspects.
Good.
Of what you have been explaining, right, James? The next section of our agenda we have on here every month, and it's your turn to, tell us if there are issues that we're missing. And God knows we got enough of them already, but if there are things that are happening and you're part of the community that we need to know about, and you need some help from other communities within Estero. So do I have anybody who wants to tell us about another problem that we haven't begun to address?
Not so much a
All right,
problem.
Joyce?
Yes. From Marsh Landing, our board wanted to bring up to the community landscaping the roundabout on Williams. And I assume it's in the plan down the pike, so something we can bring to the city, but they'd like to see it landscaped sooner rather than later. I guess people have been saying, why isn't there landscaping there? So
I see Bob King is taking notes down there. Bob's the chairman of the Transportation Committee. It was interesting, Joyce, as background, when Via Coconut was built, there was a plan to landscape the whole thing. But the people along the route had to pay for it. And at that point in time, Coconut Point was having problems. They were under construction. And they were having cost problems associated with the center because of the hurricanes in 04 and 05 had boosted the cost of everything, all construction materials. And so they backed out of the thing, and we never got to landscaping. So, but they were gonna, at that point in time, the high school was pushing for a big eagle, you know, for the symbol of their team and that type of thing. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Bill Savage from the Allen Club. I just want to give the village kudos for finally power washing the wall along Via Coconut. Speaking about Via Coconut, there were 2 sections of wall there that had never been cleaned. And last week, the village finally got somebody to clean it, and so thank you very much.
And also it's been mowed there recently and looks a lot better with the recent mowing as well.
Good, good. Other comments, suggestions? Yes.
Ken Seibert from the Groves. I just got back from Minnesota being gone in the summer. And the board came to me, I'm president of the board, and we have a problem on Sandy Lane where we call them vagrants that are parking and staying. They've been there for about 3 weeks. Lee County shushes them off. They're camping on the south side of the river, the west side of Sandy Lane. They chase them off, they come back, they chase them off, they come back. Is there signs or something that the village can put there so that if they do come, they can be arrested or penalized or something? Because they're camping out in the woods and they sit there and they got the car running during the daytime and air conditioning. Is there something, is there a department within the village that would address that?
Yeah, I can talk to that. Dave Willem, our Public Works Director, you can just call the village and you can get direction. The location you said, is that at the end of Broadway?
No, it's right across from the Estero River Estates. And there happens to be a bus stop there, and we're told that the people who are in that car have criminal records. And it's just right south of the bridge on the west side in, the edge of the road there. And they've been
I
there
think
for
that's the
weeks.
same area that ends, you can access it from Broadway also. And
It's just north of Corkscrew. Only
yes,
maybe.
yeah, I know where Estero River Estates is there, and it's right there.
It's right there, yeah.
And are they parking their cars on Sandy Lane?
No, the parking is as close to the woods as they possibly can.
Okay.
And they got their sunscreen on the windshield while they're in the shade, so, but they're staying overnight, and you see them in there during the daytime, it gets kind of hot, so they turn the air conditioner on and they're sleeping in there. But Lee County chases them off, but then they come back. So I just wondered.
I'll talk to David about that. You're more than happy to call there also, but I'll just see what we can do. It is kind of a police action, but maybe we could step up the area.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the area is in Katie Arrington's district, so she should also be informed about it, I would think. And you can get that number also, her number from the village as well. Katie Arrington and Dave Williams is the Public Works Director, who's only been here around 3 months.
And you really don't have to worry about all the names. You can just call the village number and we'll get you the right people.
Don, you got a comment back here.
I was just gonna ask, when you said Lee County, the sheriff's office is aware, or,
Yeah, they've been out there.
okay, is that who you talked to?
Yeah, ultimately, have jurisdiction. Yes.
Yes, hi, Mr. McLean, Marcia Mamel from Rookery Point. I know you've dealt with our president.
Yes.
We have the North Fork of the Estero River runs through Rookery Point. It's absolutely lovely. We're very fortunate it comes through. We noted that approximately 3-4 weeks ago, the ditch in the area to our other side was dug out. But the North Fork estuary under the highway, we now have an island we can go camp on. It's getting bigger and bigger and blocking coming flow underneath.
So the east side of Three Oaks
Right,
there?
coming
right
under
where
the
it comes
highway
in?
where it goes through a conduit, we now have a massive island.
And that's developed since they cleaned out the ditch there?
No, it's just getting bigger.
Okay.
It certainly grew with last year's hurricane, but it's getting bigger. So we wondered why they didn't go down another 100 feet to help us with the...
Well, the good news is we have a Public Works Director now.
Correct, and I believe our president of the board is
We've
at
had
the meeting.
discussions
And I
about-
believe next week's the meeting, but you're in our district.
Yep,
Yeah,
I am.
that's-
I'm in charge of the stormwater also. so.
Right, and that's why I just thought I'd let you know. He is meeting with them next week.
Oh, you have one next week with them?
Yeah, but
Okay.
just letting you know that we still have it. The other is, you brought up how we have, Hertz, its issue, the color, and we have standards, shall we call it the Mediterranean look, and it is absolutely beautiful, but what do we do with all these businesses who don't clean those roofs? There are some that are jet black. You drive by their establishment, their restaurant, their hotel, and those beautiful red tiles are black.
I mean, maintaining.
Yes,
the roof.
yeah. Perhaps we have no jurisdiction to have them do it, but they are no longer so beautiful. We have them initially do it, but we all grow mold.
I don't know what our authority is on that,
I
but
don't either.
I'll go back to David.
Okay,
That would be
but if you drive and just
That would be
decide.
code enforcement.
Well, but you know what, if you just drive and decide to look, you realize how many are black now and no longer so beautiful. But we tell them you have to,
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Thank you much, appreciate it. Next event on the agenda is Alex Greenwood and his staff. He is assembling over at Estero Coconut at Lee Health Coconut Point, our new healthcare facilities. And Alex is here to introduce his leadership team. Between now and the opening on December the 4th or the 3rd, whichever it is. 3rd. Alex is assembling 2,220 employees in that facility. So this is the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to come be in front of you again today. You guys are probably tired of hearing from me. I'm here often, but I brought our team with us today. We wanted to just each take a couple minutes to introduce ourselves, give you a little bit about our background and experience. I personally, it's a long time coming, right? And I personally feel really fortunate to have this team. They are energetic and they are forward-thinking. They're very current in their expertise, and they're really excited to be here. They share values with us. They believe in community engagement. They each have a portfolio of guest satisfaction and patient satisfaction, excellent clinical quality, and community outreach. So I'm really thrilled to have them here. I will start to set the example, and I won't assume that everybody here has heard my spiel before, so, and then I'll hand it over to them. So I'm Alex Greenwood. I'm the Vice President of Lee Health Coconut Point. I've been in Southwest Florida since 2003. I started at the HCA facility downtown and was part of the acquisition in 2007 when Lee Health acquired those facilities. I remained at Gulf Coast Hospital as we built that facility as the administrator, and then I took over the orthopedic service line. I still have that responsibility. It's a very large orthopedic service line, nationally recognized, that we're really proud of. But 3 years ago, I got the opportunity to join the steering committee. A lot of the design work around the facility and the processes within the facility, and was fortunate enough to be offered the opportunity to be the administrator. Moved down here last November, been here a year now, really excited. I feel like really getting to know everybody and becoming a part of the community. My wife is here and working at downtown Lee campus, and our son is at Bonita Charter School. So we're really thrilled to be here and really just getting started, right? It's hard to appreciate that, but we're really just getting started December 3rd. So we're looking forward to that. So I'll hand it over to Ronnie.
I'm Ronnie Cecil. I'm the Director of Plant Operations. I'll be overseeing the maintenance and operations of the facility. My background, I've been in healthcare for about 10 years now. I have over 30 years of a mechanical background. I'm from Kentucky. I've been here 3 years, so I went through a new hospital in Kentucky, 375-bed hospital construction. So I moved here and was hired on the construction for this project, mainly for this project. So I was fortunate enough to be part of the planning, design, and then I've been out there ever since from ground up. So I've seen every square inch of pipe and everything that's been out there. It's been really exciting for me to be a part of it. They offered me to take over the facility, and I accepted, and instead of moving on to another construction site. So I'm staying here, and I'm real excited about it. So you'll see me there, and I'll be glad to answer any question I can if you have questions when you come out and see the facility. So looking forward to it. Excited.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Garcia. I'll be the Director of Nursing at Lee Health Coconut Point. Born and raised in Southwest Florida, I was actually born at Lee Memorial Hospital downtown. I know there's not many of us left around here. I have about 15 years background in healthcare. Started with Lee Memorial Health Systems in 2006. My nursing background ranges from critical care, emergency medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, plastics, a little bit of outpatient surgery. Most recently, I managed patient logistics and transport for the health system, moving patients into, out of, and in between all of our campuses. So I'm very excited to be down with Coconut Point. We have a phenomenal nursing staff and patient care service line who is so excited to meet you and just serve the community. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Klein, and I am the Executive Secretary at Coconut Point. I've only been with Lee Health for about 3 months, but I absolutely love it. I have over 20 years experience working as an executive assistant. My husband and I moved here from Minnesota about 2 years ago, so I spent about 10 years at Target headquarters in the IS department, and then worked for a CEO at a hospital in Little Falls, Minnesota for about 10 years. When we moved down here a couple of years ago, I tried a position in higher ed, branch out a little bit, and found out that I really, really missed healthcare. There's just something about healthcare for me, even in a support role, that you feel like you're helping every single day. And when I interviewed with Alex for Coconut Point, I was just amazed at the atmosphere that they are creating down there and bringing this team together. It's really fun. I'm so excited to be part of this. I am so lucky to be part of Lee Health and Coconut Point.
Thanks, Mary.
Hi, my name's Corey Maurer. This is my 5th day with Lee Health. I am the secretary to Ronnie, Plant Operations, also Carrie and Kirk for facilities and the Wellness Center. I was in administration while I was in the Air Force, and looking very forward to working with everyone here. Thank you.
Guess I'll stay over here. But my name's Joe Ryan. I'll be your director of ancillary services in the building. So a lot of people say, what are the ancillary services? That is, includes imaging, so X-ray, MRI, CT, all the diagnostic tests you can get, the cardiac testing, like a stress test, things like that. It also includes the lab for your blood work. It includes physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, cardiac rehab, and the breast health center. In addition to that, one of the ancillary categories is the respiratory team, which will work mostly in the ER. So there's some crossover with Amanda and I there. I am originally from Cincinnati, but I grew up in Southwest Florida. I'm a Fort Myers High alum, Florida State University alum. It's okay if you're a Gator. I'm a University of Florida grad for PT school. My background is in physical therapy. So that's how I started out. I started with Lee Health in 2010. And I was working at the rehab hospital down at the Lee campus. So what we did there was mostly stroke, brain injury, spinal cord. I have my initial introduction to physical therapy was in the sports world, and then I moved into the neuro world, and so now I'm kind of excited to be back in the outpatient world again with sort of a much larger horizon. So I am really excited, really confident. I think you guys will be so pleased with the people that we've hired. I mean, we have worked so hard. Actually went through the, I guess you could call it the acceptance rate. So we had so many applicants. For every one that I've hired, I've said no to about 5. So we've gone through, we're really trying to get the right team culture because we're really committed to doing it right from the beginning, because you really don't have an opportunity to do that ever. Usually you're sort of inheriting a culture or merging 2 cultures, but we have spent so much time to make sure that we get the right employees for you all. So be happy to answer any questions you guys have, especially after we go through all of these, but I'll pass it off to Angela.
Hi, good morning. I'm Angela Snyder. I'm the practice director for Lee Health, Lee Physician Group at Coconut Point. With that being said, we're going to be moving over several practices to meet the community's needs. from pediatrics, primary care, pulmonary, ortho, OBGYN, cardiology, and general and vascular surgery, and also bringing specialists with GI, endo, and rheumatology. So a lot of specialties and primary care opportunities for the community. My background is an RN, doing the math. I'm sorry to say that I've been a nurse for 23 years. My background is in critical care, so a lot of years spent doing that, and in the last 5 years been doing leadership role, and have been in this community working and living for the last 5 years. So proud to be bringing this to you guys.
So hi, my name is Carrie Blommers, and I am manager of the Healthy Life Center Coconut Point. And I moved to Southwest Florida in 2011 from Cincinnati, and I've been here since. I am a registered dietitian by trade, so I've been a dietitian for going on 7 years now. So with my journey through Lee Health, I've been here 5 years. I've spent a couple years in our outpatient team working with people on their nutrition goals one-on-one. And then when this project started and we really landed here and opening the Healthy Life Center in December 2015, I was eager to join that team. So next summer of 2016 landed me down here to help in a community setting through education and wellness. So that's really my passion, is the health, wellness, prevention for our community. So giving people and empowering them with the tools. So whether it's education or it may be skills at our new facility, we'll have the teaching kitchen, or helping them navigate healthcare services or physicians or specialists. So our Healthy Life Center team, we're really excited to also move over to the new facility and be able to just continue to bring the latest in health and wellness prevention.
Good morning, my name is Kirk Stone. I'm the Director of Professional Services. I am returning back to Lee Health after 13 years. I have been here for about 105 days, and I am extremely excited to be back home. I am overseeing all of registrations, so all the smiling faces you're going to see when you first walk into the facility. I am also overseeing housekeeping, food services, security, and guest services and materials management. I have to tell you, I have to echo what Joe was saying. The team that we have in building that is going to be serving the community is phenomenal. And when we are interviewing these folks, they are actually echoing what we're saying about exceptional service, improved communications, the pure development of a healthier life. So I want you to know that we have actually interviewed, I don't know about everybody here, I think I've interviewed probably 500 folks. And I will tell you, we have selected the best for this community. So I look forward to working with you. I love feedback. If you see something that we can do better, I am over at Guest Services, so please come see me. My name is Kirk Stone, and I look forward to good and bad experiences. So thank you.
Good morning, my name is Molly Grubbs, and most of you probably know me because I have been the face coming to a lot of your meetings, but my role, I am the Community Business Development Representative. I started with Lee Health in 2015 when we opened the Healthy Life Center at Coconut Point. At that time, my role was to develop that concept here in Estero, to create those relationships and really bring awareness to Lee Health Coconut Point and the project starting in 2015. So I've been along for the journey these last couple of years, building great relationships with Don. You've been phenomenal, and really getting to know all of you. I echo what Carrie mentioned. My focus, where Carrie's inside the Healthy Life Center, promoting health and wellness, I am the liaison to all of the communities to bring programming to you, to keep your residents well. I also today, I'm going to be giving you an update on our technology inside the building, so I'm excited to do that. And then you also will see that I handed out to each of you an invitation to our open house. We are hosting an open house for the community on November 17th. We are going to kick off that day with a 5K at 7:30. You're welcome to run with us, walk with us. That will start at 7:30, and then the official open house will kick off at 9 a.m. So at 9 a.m. you'll come in, we will have tours, we'll have activities. Carrie will have some cooking demonstrations, we'll have activities for children, give tours of the emergency room, the entire facility. Dawn, also, probably you all received an email about the tour offer for all the residents to take tours in October. I'm happy to say that all of those spots are filled, but we would love to see you on November 17th for our open house.
Good job. Thank you. Really a proud moment for me to present this team to you guys. So it's been a long time coming. I'm really proud of them. Don, if you have time on the agenda, we have a handful of slides that we wanted to hot off the presses about the technology in the facility.
I think we better save it for...
Okay, we can do that. We can do that. Appreciate everyone's time, and that's the team that you'll be working with over the next few years.
Are there questions for Alex and members of the team? Yes.
I have one. I think I might have asked it before, but I'm going to ask it again. Is there any chance in the future you're going to have an exercise facility over there?
We will have exercise classes in the Healthy Life Center. It's a little different than a typical gym. You're asking about a typical gym.
Yes.
We are considering, there are some options within the facility now where there's exercise equipment. There could be opportunities to leverage that for the community. We haven't quite figured that out yet. As far as the typical wellness center, we don't have plans today, but it could be planned in the future. We haven't landed that yet. Yes, sir.
Down in the middle.
3 questions. The future of the Bonita Health Center, the future of the Healthy Life Center, where it's going to be going from, and the eventual tower.
Okay, great. So I'll start with the tower. We received approval on the of our certificate of need application for the tower earlier this year. It's been appealed by a couple different organizations. We're working through right now a period of discovery for everyone involved. There's some depositions happening currently and a hearing scheduled for January. And we have some representation from this group. I think Don is going up in January as well to testify on our behalf. So we expect to have an answer by the middle of hopefully late spring to early summer next year, hopefully, is what we're looking for. It's going to take a little longer than usual, I think, because there's so many different organizations involved. So we'll work through that. The Healthy Life Center, where they are currently, we have a lease through December, is that right? Lease through December, we plan to let that go. So the mall will be getting that space back. And then what was the third one?
Bonita Health Center.
Yeah, Bonita Community Health Center, Sarah McCullum. Sarah McCullum is the CEO there. We're working really closely with her on how to find some synergies between the two organizations. It's not atypical that when you have a health campus, there are multiple owners and multiple entities there working together. We think we're going to be able to do that just fine.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought I saw one more hand. Yeah.
I spent Irma on the 3rd floor of a hospital in Melbourne, so I'm just wondering about the hurricane survivability standard that the new hospital is built to.
Yeah, it's all built to Code 5 standards.
Okay.
Hurricane 5 standards. Yeah.
Okay, one more.
Do you have a volunteer office, and which one of your administrators would we go to about that?
We'll let Molly answer that one.
So we actually we are recruiting volunteers, and we have several that have already let us know that they have interest. To actually express interest, you want to go to the main Lee Health website. You'll see there'll be a tab for volunteers. If you click on that tab, I'm excited to update that Coconut Point has been added to that page. So you would look for Gulf Coast Hospital and click there, and then you'll fill out an application. And Gulf Coast is handling, to be a volunteer at Lee Health, you'll have to do two TB tests, fill out an application, and then we have a monthly orientation every Friday. So it's a pretty simple process. But that's where you would go to apply, and then the volunteers are going to be coordinated actually by one of Carrie's staff members, Paula. So you would then be connected to Paula, and then we would match you. We've already surveyed all of the leaders to come up with positions in each of their departments. So we would then see what your interests are and then match you to a opportunity from there.
Alex, since there's been such an overwhelming response to the effort to take tours, would it be possible to extend that into November?
Yeah, there's a possibility we will extend that into November, maybe do a couple more weeks into November, but I need to let some of the training play out and workshops that we have scheduled. Those have to be a priority right now, but I anticipate more dates opening up for sure.
To get 140 tourists in 3 days was
Unreal, yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. We appreciate the
so
support.
There's obviously some interest.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think the last thing I did want to mention is we're excited about our healthy news that will be coming out. So be on the lookout for the November edition of Healthy News that the actual Lee Health puts out. The entire publication will be dedicated to Coconut Point.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you. We would love to stay, but we have a lot of work to do. So you guys have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Next on the agenda is going back to what John was talking about at some length before, talking about the Caloosahatchee and the water release. And we are fortunate to have with us this morning James Evans, who's been a long time scientist working for the city of Sanibel. Thank you for coming all the way down here today, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks, and I want to thank Don for inviting me to speak to you today. And I'm not sure that I can do a better job than Councilman McLean did in explaining so clearly and concisely this issue. I think he did a really good job of kind of laying it out, especially at the 30,000 foot level. I'm going to get into a little more of the details, but again, my name is James Evans. I'm the Director of Natural Resources for the City of Sanibel. I've been with the City of Sanibel going on 19 years in January, so worked on a lot of different issues. My focus areas are really on estuarine ecology, freshwater ecology, marine biology, things like that. So I've worked with a team of scientists from the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, as well as John Cassani, the Colusa River Keeper, as a number of other folks on various panels, boards, committees working on these issues. So today I really want to kind of talk about the Caloosahatchee minimum flow and levels issues that we're dealing with today. And as the councilman indicated, the city of Sanibel, along with the other cities of Lee County, 6 cities, of course, along with the Captiva Erosion Prevention District, which is a special district on Captiva, as well as the Captiva Community Panel, are all joined on a petition. We're joint petitioners challenging what's called the Caloosahatchee Minimum Flow and Level Rule Update. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of where, how we got to the situation we're in today, how we're connected to Lake Okeechobee and the greater Everglades ecosystem, and then I'm going to talk specifically about the minimum flow and level rule so you all know what it is and what it isn't. So as you know, the Caloosahatchee, Sanibel's located right here at the mouth of the Caloosahatchee. Estero is located somewhere down here. And you'll notice that up here in this image here, this shows the area of the South Florida Water Management District. It includes 16 counties. It includes the watershed that extends all the way south of Orlando through Lake Okeechobee and into Lee County here. And because of the connection between the Caloosahatchee River and the Lake Okeechobee, as well as the connections made to the Kissimmee, our watershed really contains that entire area. But the Caloosahatchee watershed alone is about 865,000 acres of land. So that's a tremendously large watershed in and of itself, without the connections that were made to Lake Okeechobee and of course to the Kissimmee. And so we go back in time, prior to the 1880s, the Caloosahatchee historically was not connected to Lake Okeechobee. It wasn't until an industrialist from Philadelphia that came down in Florida, bought about 4 million acres of land. His name was Hamilton Diston, and he dredged a connection from the Caloosahatchee to Lake Okeechobee. with hopes that he could drain the lands around Lake Okeechobee and in the Caloosahatchee watershed and north of Lake Okeechobee in the Kissimmee watershed for development, for agricultural development and future development throughout Florida. And unfortunately, it worked well. And that was, of course, transitioned later to the Army Corps of Engineers, and there was a congressional authorization that allowed the Army Corps of Engineers to carry that plan forward. And it was turned into what's called the Central and South Florida Project. And that allowed the Army Corps of Engineers to dredge, ditch, and drain and channelize the entire ecosystem from south of Orlando into the Lake Okeechobee, east to the St. Lucie, and west to the Caloosahatchee, and of course south into the Everglades ecosystem. My focus today is really on the Caloosahatchee, but we can come back another day if we want to talk about Everglades restoration. But you can see here, this image shows this blue line here is the historic meandering channel of the Caloosahatchee River prior to the dredging that occurred in the 1880s when Hamilton-Dixon made those first connections. This image is taken from around 1920, but you can see the straightened, what we call now the C-43 Canal. They don't even refer to the Caloosahatchee as the Caloosahatchee. It's really, when you're working with the agencies, it's referred to as the C-43 Canal. And of course, when you straighten a system like that, you change the natural benefits that a meandering river and the oxbows that slow down the flow of that river would produce when it comes to water quality. And in the Caloosahatchee, we have two major issues. And we like to refer to this as the Caloosahatchee conundrum and the Goldilocks principle. We either get too much water when we don't need it during the rainy season, or we don't get enough water when we actually do need it during the dry season. And so I'm going to be focused on the too little water today. But as you know, over the past several years, including what happened this year, beginning in May, when the water levels within Lake Okeechobee get really high, the Army Corps of Engineers discharges that water to tide, east and west. And the Caloosahatchee River, of course, gets the lion's share of that water. And with that water comes a lot of nutrients, such as nitrogen and phosphorus. And that nitrogen and phosphorus can drive algae blooms, like we see here in 2006. This is algae that's piled up on Sanibel in 2006, red drift algae. This is also some algae that blanketed the Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge, which sees almost 1 million visitors per year. And obviously, those types of things have a tremendous impact on our local economy, as well as the ecology of our coastal waters. Again, I'm going to be focusing on the low flow issues, but not only do we see these nutrient issues and algae blooms that occur during the high flow issues like this year, we also see them when we don't get enough water. This is an image. This is the east side of the Franklin Lock and Dam. This is the Franklin Lock. We also refer to it as the S79 structure. This is the estuary side. The San Carlos Bay would be down in this area here. But you can see this algae bloom that's occurring here is another type of toxic blue-green algae called Anabina. And this formed in 2008 when we weren't getting enough fresh water. So some of the issues that we have when we don't get enough fresh water, we see these blooms occur, but we also see the salinity within the estuary climb to a point at which it starts to kill off some of our seagrasses or this predominantly freshwater tape grass called Valsinaria americana. And it also has impacts on oysters, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So what's needed to get the water right? Well, during the dry season, we need a certain amount of flow, and during the wet season, we want to reduce those flows below a certain level, and I'll show you some of those thresholds. This is what happens when we see too much flow. Again, these are the nutrient impacts, and this is all related to not having enough storage throughout the system. So when you make these connections, these dredge connections between different parts of the system, from the Kissimmee, from Lake Okeechobee to the Caloosahatchee to the St. Lucie, you get the water to the coast really quickly, and it's very flashy, so it gets there untreated. And when it gets there untreated, you have biological responses, and those biological responses are algae blooms in our case. And those biological responses can carry on to contributions to red tide. While red tide is not directly caused, and I'll use the word caused, by nutrient runoff from the landscape, it is fed or fueled by them, and that's been quantified in a lot of scientific research and journals, peer-reviewed and other documents. So we know that what we're doing on the landscape isn't helping the red tide situation. While it does start offshore, it moves onshore, it is fed by what we do on our own landscape. But again, my focus today is really on too little water. And this is an image that was taken in 2010. It shows a fairly healthy Valsenary americana, which is tape grass or wild celery. That's a freshwater grass within the upper portion of the Caloosahatchee River. When we're talking about the upper portion, we're predominantly talking about this area from the Franklin Lock and Dam all the way down to about the Cape Coral Bridge. Historically, this tape grass existed between the US 41 bridges down to about the Cape Coral bridges. That was about 2,000 acres of tape grass habitat that previously existed prior to some of the mismanagement, we'll say, of the Caloosahatchee occurred beginning in 1999. And what's important about this is that it's not just the tape grass we're worried about. It's all of the other ecosystem components that tape grass supports. Whether it's the fish that you go out here and catch throughout the estuary or out in our marine waters, which spawn in those important low salinity zones throughout the Caloosahatchee or Estero Bay. I did my graduate work in Estero Bay and looked at the influence of freshwater inflow to Estero Bay. And we found that if you don't get enough freshwater inflow to those systems, that can impact the whole trophic food web throughout all of Estero Bay. That also happens in the Caloosahatchee. And so what happens is when you don't get enough salinity, we start to see this loss. This is the same grass bed that was taken later in December of 2010. You can see it's covered with algae. We got shoots that are about that tall versus, shoots here that are, 8 or 10 inches. But historically, I'll show you some photos of what it looked like historically. Prior to 1999, it was a very different habitat. But this low salinity zone, which we define by an area within the estuary that's somewhere between 0.6 practical salinity units and 5 practical salinity units. When you look at the whole continuum of an estuary, it goes from 0 all the way to pure seawater at 35. So just to give you an idea of what scale we're looking at. This is the upper estuary. We're looking at those low salinity zones. And those low salinity zones support fish, shrimp, blue crabs, a lot of our economically and ecologically important finfish and shellfish. So just so you all know how that relates. And so, let me go back. So what the minimum flow and level, at least based on a lot of science that we've collected, along with the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation's Marine Lab and others, it suggests that the minimum flow and level should be somewhere between 650 and 720 cubic feet per second.
Can we dim the lights so we get a better...
Is this the switch here?
Yeah.
Okay, is that too much?
No,
Okay, very good. Is that okay? Okay, very good. And so some ecological targets have been established for the Caloosahatchee, and we have low flow targets and we have high flow targets. I'm going to focus on the low flow targets today. But these were targets that were established by the South Florida Water Management District scientists. And there's some very, very good scientists that work for the South Florida Water Management District. And this goes back to the early to mid 90s when they started developing targets for the Caloosahatchee. And what we found is the low flow targets, somewhere around 450 cubic feet per second, at least going back to the late 1990s, was protective of the ecosystem in the upper estuary. If we get above flows of 2,800 cubic feet per second on the high flow end, that's when we start to see impacts to the lower estuary. That's somewhere around Shell Point, if you're familiar with that area. And when we start to see flows above 4,500, we see impacts in San Carlos Bay. It starts to impact our marine seagrasses. That means the salinity is actually getting too low, and we're starting to impact the marine seagrasses. And when we start to get above 6,500 cubic feet per second, which we did for quite some time this summer and in previous years, that starts to impact the Gulf of Mexico, and that's where you guys really start to see some impacts in your coastal waters. From Fort Myers Beach all the way down to Bonita, Estero area, we start to see those impacts to offshore waters and that dark freshwater plume that extends well out into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, we're focused on this upper estuary here for the low flows. And again, these targets, this shows you kind of where the targets impact the certain regions of the system. So at 650 cubic feet per second or less, we're impacting the upper estuary. At flows greater than 2,800 cubic feet per second, we're impacting the lower estuary. At targets or flows above 4,500, we're impacting San Carlos Bay up into Matlacha and Pine Island Sound. And then it flows over 6,500, it extends well out into the Gulf of Mexico. This just shows you some of the ecological organisms that we're trying to protect with these targets. Again, we focus on the Valsinaria americana, the freshwater tape grass, for these low flow issues. So going back in history here, historically, these are some photos that were taken in 1979 to 1984, taken by John Cassani, the Caloosahatchee River Keeper. River Keeper, and these, it's kind of hard to see in these images, but all of this green area here is tape grass. You could essentially walk across it. The blades were over 1 meter long, over 3 feet long, and in 1999 was the last time we saw habitat where we saw blades that exceeded 1 meter long, and those plants were actually flowering and being productive and providing productive habitat. But that was a pretty significant habitat and covered about 2,000 acres in the Caloosahatchee. There's a good example of what it looked like. You can imagine all the fish, the manatees, and all of the other organisms that were supported. Not to mention, as the water moves through that system very slowly, it has a cleansing effect. It's almost like a filter marsh. The nutrients are being taken up by the grasses. The water is being purified before it gets to the lower estuary and out into the San Carlos Bay and into the Gulf of Mexico. It had a tremendous baffling effect on those nutrients and sediments that move through that system. And so this gives you an idea, and this was a graph that shows from 2007 through 2009 when the flows were within the preferred range for this Valsinaria americana, this tape grass. And you could see only a brief period of time between July, July and October of 2009. We were in the optimal range, and most of the time we're outside the box. And that's the problem, is that we're not providing enough flow to keep the salinity below what's needed to maintain that grass. And so what is a minimum flow and level? A minimum flow and level is the limit at which further withdrawals would be significantly harmful to the water resources or ecology of the area, and that's in Florida statutes. And the South Florida Water Management District defines significant harm as the temporary loss of water resource functions which result from a change in surface or groundwater hydrology that takes more than 2 years to recover, but which is considered less severe than serious harm. Well, we would argue that the impact of the tape grass in the upper estuary, which has been identified as what's called a valued ecosystem component for the estuary, is now on the order of serious harm, because not only has it, we haven't recovered it in the past 2 years since the rule was adopted in 2001. We're now proposing a rule, or the district is proposing a rule, that shifts the baseline away from protection of that resource because they haven't been able to recover it, because they haven't been able to get the salinity at the appropriate levels in the past 18 years. And so now they just want to shift the baseline. And that's our main concern about this change in the rule. And so why are we challenging the proposed rule? Well, we feel that the proposed rule is less protective than the 2001 rule. And it's a flow target versus a salinity target, and I'll go through why. And that it shifts the ecological baseline away from a sensitive ecological indicator habitat like tape grass, which is a habitat, not a single species, which they would argue is single species management, but we would argue it's representative, an ecological indicator of an entire ecosystem. And their methods average the salinity targets or the flow targets over 11 different components rather than the most sensitive ecological indicators, which is tape grass. And this would result in higher dry season salinities and impacts to all organisms that depend on the low salinity zone. And I, again, talked about the fish, the invertebrates, and that's the area that we're trying to protect. And the proposed changes compared to the 2001 rule that's in place now, the magnitude change in flow would be from 300 to 400. And you're probably asking, well, that's an increase, not a decrease. That's correct, except for we're shifting the duration focus away from the salinity target of 10 practical salinity units or parts per thousand, which is the same, to a 30-day moving average of 400 CFS flow. While they've added this 10 PSU as a secondary, notice this and here, they would have to exceed the 400 CFS, cubic feet per second target for more than 30-day moving average and have 10 PSU violated. We know already that 400 does not produce 10 PSU, practical salinity units, at Fort Myers at the measuring station. So it is one of our major arguments, is that you don't get 10 practical salinity units with 400 400 cubic feet per second. And then, of course, this return frequency, an exceedance under the 2001 rule occurs when you have it for two consecutive years. And just so you all know, over 11 out of the last 18 years, we've had violations of the existing rule. However, what we call the prevention and recovery strategy, that is the C43 West Basin Reservoir. That's a reservoir that's going to store a large amount of water within the Caloosahatchee. It was about a $600 million project. Now they're estimating it's about $1 billion project. That's supposed to be completed by 2022, and they do not even need to meet this rule until that prevention and recovery strategy is in place. So our other argument is that what's the hurry in updating this rule with bad information when we can't even enforce it until 2022? So that's another one of our arguments. And I'm not going to get into legal strategy because we are in the middle of litigation here, so I have to be careful on how we talk about strategy and things like that. But the component analysis, the study that they did, averages it over 11 different organisms or 11 different component studies. And it doesn't weight it on the most sensitive one, which is the Valsenaria tape grass. And it's based on measured data, not just modeled data. And we're arguing also that some of their modeled data there are some errors in the way they've modeled this data. And we'll, of course, have expert witnesses that will speak to that at the hearing. The hearing is scheduled right now for October 29th and 30th. It's a very accelerated process. It's a 30-day timeline from the time we file the petition to challenge the rule to the time we actually have to appear in front of a judge, an administrative law judge. And so I think I only have one or two more slides here. But the final Caloosahatchee River West Basin Storage Reservoir Project Implementation Report and Environmental Impact Study that was produced in November 2010 outlined some of the ecological performance measures. And what it cited for Valsenaria was that the optimal target for the tape grass was 800 to 1500 CFS. They're arguing that 400 CFS is protective of tape grass. We're arguing that it's not, and I think we have some really good science to suggest that. Here's some data that was collected in 2017 by the SECF Marine Lab that shows you that when we were getting flows between December of 2016 and May of 2017, we were getting flows of 630 cubic feet per second, and our salinities were at 11.6 PSU. Again here, when we got flows of about 730, that put us at 9.6. And when we had flows of 360, salinity shot back up to 15.3. Same thing happened in 2018. This year, from January all the way to May, we were getting flows above 650 cubic feet per second. Our salinities were above 10. And here we were getting flows of 700 and salinities were at 12. That's pretty clear that the targets that they're proposing are not going to work for the estuary. And so this shows you some of the habitat that would be lost if we get 400 CFS for the next several years, that will probably lose another 600 acres of tape grass. And the tape grass that we have right now, I would argue, is not biologically productive. We're talking about shoots that are a couple inches tall versus back in 99, prior to 1999, where it was over a meter, which provided really good habitat. That's what the habitat looked like. And again, that baffling effect provided really good water quality for the estuary and our coastal waters, and that's what's been lost, and we want to recover that. And of course, the one thing I didn't talk about is that if we get the water we need during the dry season, that means there's less water in Lake Okeechobee. While we were getting above the minimum flow this year, we were getting over 650 and the minimum flow would be 400, we were able to get that water out of the lake. We were actually asking for between 800 and 1,000 cubic feet per second from January all the way to May. That would have been several inches of water out of the lake that we wouldn't have had to receive, and the East Coast wouldn't have had to receive this summer. So we think it's a win-win. Unfortunately, we're competing with water supply for that same water, and I think that's the big argument and why the South Fork Water Management District is challenging us, is arguing against our challenge. So thanks for your time. If you have any questions.
Hit the light.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for your extensive presentation.
Sure.
After October 29th and 30th, then we've got a hearing examiner decision, right? What happens after that?
So the administrative law judge is either going to determine, in the favor of the district that they have sound science, which has been peer reviewed, but it was peer reviewed in a vacuum somewhat. They gave them specific things to look at and didn't provide them all of the information, in my opinion. And so once that's all reviewed and the administrative law judge determines whether that the update can move forward, then at that point we'll just have to deal with what we have. The politics could change after this next election. I think both of the gubernatorial candidates have talked about the need for changing the makeup of the Water Management District Board, so that may be helpful. But our focus really is on the science. And so if they rule in favor of us, then we would argue that what we have in place today is more protective because it's based on a salinity target, not a flow target. We would want the Water Management District to move forward with a couple-year pilot study between now and when the C43 reservoir comes online to use measured data, not modeled data. And that's what they should have been relying on for this whole rule to begin with. But again, it's all about competing water uses. And I would argue that the water has been over-allocated throughout the system, and there's not enough water to give us what we need and also meet the legal obligations of the permitted users. So that's where the rub is. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a pushback on this issue.
Well, thank you. We don't have time, Joe, sorry.
And I can give you my card if you guys want to talk to me afterwards. I can leave a couple cards with Don.
The village moved affirmatively to join the coalition cities in support of this. And we just wanted to be sure that everybody here understood the issues so that as it proceeds over the next years, that we can have some effective input at that time. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
With that, I call on Bob King to talk about the week fish camps proposal that will be presented to the community on the 18th at Estero Parkway.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because this is really important to us. Us being all of the residents of Estero that are sportsmen and like to use the water. What you're seeing in front of you is some advertising material that was put out by the London Bay Group, who is proposing to develop the property. And one of the commitments that they have made is that they are going to maintain the marina. That marina gives us an access to the water that we wouldn't have had otherwise. This is some pictures of what the Weeks Fish Camp. We have Mr. Weeks with us today, and we're very glad for you to be here to support us.
Anyone has any questions after the meeting, just let me know.
This is an outline of the property. It's about 32 acres. The existing, or the previous fish camp was located right here, or the ramp. The rest of this is being proposed for development of about 300 assisted living facilities, or as I've also learned, it could be 300 residential units if they don't get approval for the assisted living. There's let me find my little button here. There it is. Here was a road that originally went into that property. That's not going to be available anymore. That's now part of the development. So there's going to be a new road proposed to be cut in here. We need to participate in this meeting on the 18th. At that time, the developer is going to propose what he wants to do as far as the development is concerned and the retention of the ramp. The company's the London Bay Group. I have included a link into the material that they've made public so far. That when this goes on our website, you'll be able to hit that link and see what they are proposing. Right now, as I had mentioned, it's 300 units and a reactivation of the marina. It's actually in the jurisdiction of Bonita Springs. The property is in there, we end up owning the road. We have Coconut Road, and if there's any impact, we'll be able to, or be required to deal with that. The public information schedule, as I mentioned, is on the 18th at 6 o'clock at Estero High School. Why do we need to go to this? This is our last opportunity to have access to Estero Bay. Right at the moment, if you look at the village's brand new comprehensive plan, policy 1.2.1 discourages power boats to enter the bay through the Estero River. The only other opportunity is at this location where the Weeks Fish Camp existed. We need to participate and make sure that the developer understands what importance we place on that facility. No, I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about that. So again, I ask that you and alert your neighbors or anybody you can find participate in this meeting. Make sure that those folks from the London Bay Group understand how important we consider that access to be. Any questions? Pete.
If you could go back to the figure that shows the red outline of the property.
Yes.
Right there. The Hyatt Coconut Point is in the lower right-hand corner. Coconut Road comes there.
Coconut
right
Road is here.
Is the rest of Coconut Road right there? Is that part of Estero, or is that a private road? Because it's kind of not really a very good road. All the way to the end where the other arena is.
Here?
Yeah. Is that Estero Road?
No, up in this area belongs to
Coconut
the
Road is, but I think the other is Bonita.
But, okay, Coconut Road to the right is Estero, but yeah, that part there, is
right
it
up to here.
Estero or Bonita?
Right to that point. This is Bonita, as is. There's a piece in here that belongs to Estero, the road belongs to Estero. There's also some plots in that same area that belong to Lee County. So there's multiple ownership in that area. Mr. Weeks?
I think I can answer your question. All of Coconut Road is Lee County. So to me, that's Estero. It's a viewer's road since 1930, set in place by the residents back in the 30s. How important it was to drive down Coconut Road and get a view of the bay. So the Hyatt came in, moved Coconut Road. I don't know how they got permission to do that. But it goes all the way to Pelican Landing's launch down there. So yes, Coconut Road is all Coconut Road. Even the stretch for
It's all Estero. But
there should be, it's Lee County, the way I understand.
No, there was an agreement between the village and the county, and it's now the village responsibility. But I think that area down there that is outside of the village limits probably is not affected by that. It's only that portion of it that is in the Estero village limits. Okay? And that would start about the western edge. It's about the entrance to the colony is where it actually starts, because in the annexation of Bonita, they annexed the portion of the colony that is west of the entrance there. That community was just built there with a lot of mid-rises.
Right.
That's Bonita Springs. Okay? So the portion of the road east of there would be Estero, and west of there is either Bonita or the county.
But it still has the distinction in Lee County as a viewer's road.
Yeah. Bob, any other questions for Bob on this one?
Another issue right behind this, of course, is the three towers, which are in a state of flux now, whether they're going to be built and the impact that that's going to have on West Coconut Road as far as traffic is concerned. So that's another concern.
That's another story. And at the moment, that's.
Yeah, we don't have time to get into that right today.
We'll be back to talk about that one again.
Yeah. Other questions, comments? With that, I'd like to call on Jim Shields, who moved up the Educational Outreach Council report. since Jim has to,
Thank you.
another appointment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Dispense with the slides. I'll just share the information with you. Thanks to the Village of Estero, Nick Beto's direction, the Lee School Board agreed to a curriculum for the Estero area schools, very unique, that junior achievement be invited into the classroom, and as a part of their curriculum, that we would provide for all second graders, fifth graders, eighth graders, and 11th graders in the Village of Estero a set of programs that focus on work readiness, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. We are in the fall term. We have 160 classes that we have scheduled, and we have 158 that are filled with team teaching facilitators who are Estero Education Ambassadors, people that have volunteered from across our community. 74% are people from businesses that have, their career has been about business, but half are active, currently active, owning and running businesses in Estero. The other half are people like many of us around the table that are in retirement, but wanted to step up to the plate and be part of it. 26 of the people are former educators, people that are now living here that had a very successful career in education, and they're stepping up to the plate and coming into the classroom, 2nd, 5th, 8th, 11th grade. The principals from the 4 schools, Pine Woods Elementary, Three Oaks Elementary, Three Oaks Middle School, and Estero High School have been excellent to work with. This is not a top-down forced march. This is what you have to do. Each of the teachers that in these 160 individual classes that we're teaching, in these 32 classes, 160 individual sessions, have decided at what day and what time would it be appropriate to have this class of 20 to 25 kids for us to step into the arena and facilitate these classes. We're working with a teacher. It is team teaching. We have a lead volunteer who steps forward and leads the class, and we have a partner volunteer that comes in. These sessions, these classes are 45 minutes in duration, and 45 minutes goes like that. So it's great to have team teaching as a part of our approach and program. No other community, no other municipality in Southwest Florida is doing this. This is a pilot program. This is a first. It's put together, approved curriculum by Dr. Wanda Creel at the Lee School Board, has full support. Chris Patrica was a big part of it, as was Nick. And we have a cadre of 6 people that are leading the charge, people that have volunteered, people that I did not know before I got my feet wet into this thing, started it, but there are 4 of the people that currently have kids in the school system. 1 is in the room with us today that has a 9th grader at Estero High School and has a 3rd grader at Three Oaks Elementary. That person is also secretary of the parent teacher organization at Three Oaks Elementary. That individual lives at Estero River Estates. That's Meg Dardanova. She came with me this morning. Meg not only is co-leader to recruit kids for 2nd grade and 5th grade at Pine Woods Elementary and Three Oaks Elementary, but she also steps into the classroom, and within an hour from now, Meg and I will be in the 5th grade classroom at Pine Woods Elementary with Miss Lambert's class and the 22 kids there, and so we're going to have to leave early and do that, but Meg also has stepped forward, and she will do an 11th grade class with JA Career Success. It's the junior achievement content for work readiness, financial literacy, and financial literacy is unequaled. It's unequaled. Next year will be the 100th year for junior achievement in America, started in 1919. I've been connected with it for 62 years as a student, as a member of a board in Central Indiana, as a person that presented classes in Indiana and now here. And we're pleased and proud to be able to say that it's a program that's playing out very nicely this semester. We have a lot of work to do. We're readying ourselves. We had a meeting at 9 o'clock this morning at Miramar Lakes, our leadership team, and we're getting ready for the next semester. So, and it does happen. Stuff happens. We had a person that was to have a class in 2 days, raised their hand, called us up and said, I can't do it. What do? You backfill, you step in, and we've got people like Meg that step forward and do it. So I want you to give a hand of applause to Meg Dardanova for stepping forward. We're all volunteers. She does an outstanding job as well as the other category. Meg, thank you very much. I'm here on behalf of Jim Gilmartin, who's actually the chair of the ECCL Education Outreach Council. There are 2 other individuals here this morning that would like to come and share a few words with you. And I would invite Kevin Tolliver to come forward and talk about the work that he's doing with Lee Schools along with Nick Betos. Kevin?
If it's okay, I'm just going to do it from here. My report's going to be fairly brief. My role with the EOC is to coordinate with Lee County Schools for the support type programs. We're not teaching. Our part of the organization, we're doing tutors, mentoring, a new program that is being developed, which I'm very excited about, is something they call the AVID program, which stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And this is a program for kids that have a lot of barriers to attending a college. A lot of them are potential first generation college attenders. So this program is being developed to help these kids through the process of getting into a college. What they need to do to prepare for that, college applications and so forth and so on. So anyway, there'll also be reading programs for the kids. So this is advancing. We're in the process of developing this, and we're in the process of plugging the volunteers into these programs right now. Again, Nick Betos is kind of spearheading this for the village. We need volunteers. Right now we have about 25 to 30 volunteers, which isn't enough. Just every time every time the ECCL sends out a promotional email, we seem to get an influx of volunteers. So I would encourage, if the ECCL can keep doing that, that would be just great. And the other thing is, I have a meeting next week with Nick and Karen Brown, and we have some ideas to kind of expand our scope to bring volunteers in. So hopefully there'll be more on that later. So anyway, that's my report. I'd like to introduce Bill Mozart to do the FGC Institute for Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, we've got 3 portfolios, and one is junior achievement engagement with the Estero area schools. The second portfolio is what Kevin has, was work with Nick Betos. And then the 3rd portfolio, which is very important to us, is our connection with FGCU and the Institute for Entrepreneurship. And Bill Mozart from Grandeza is here with us to give us an update on that. Bill, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I think we have a slide. How do we move the slides forward, or don't we? No?
That's all I got.
Okay, no problem.
It's actually easier without the slide. So as Jim mentioned, I'm working closely with the Institute for Entrepreneurship at Florida Gulf Coast University, and in getting them to reach out to those individuals who have expressed an interest through the ECCL and us in becoming mentors for the various programs. And if you recall, they really have 3 programs. They have one for veterans. They have one which they call the Runway program for individuals within the university that have ideas that they want to develop. And they have students who are majoring or minoring in entrepreneurship and taking classes. I started doing some of the mentoring about a week or so ago for the kids that are majoring or minoring in entrepreneurship. And it's a program that's really now growing very quickly. It's doubled in size from last year, from 17 to 17-18, it's gone from about 173 students to about 375 students. Doubled the staff from 15 to 30.
They're in the process now. They've gotten approval to move from a ancillary facility out off of Lico to the main campus, and they're going to be building their own building called the Institute for Entrepreneurship, and I think there's going to be some fundraising activity. So I would encourage any of you who want your name on the building to step up. I'm not sure what the cost is yet, but I would think $1 million would do it. But so anyway, you know, as some of you may remember, it's taken us a while to get more involved with this program. They've been building it. They've been focused on a lot of other things. But I think now in working with them through this summer, we've gotten to the point where they're prepared now to send out a letter to all of those individuals who expressed an interest in mentoring. And I'm kind of working with them on that, and I've got a copy of a letter to kind of critique. They're also going to send along with that a guide for mentorship, which looks like this. Some of you have seen it, some of you may have filled it out. We're updating it so that we can include in that your skill sets. So the individuals can kind of through a checklist outline what their skill sets are, so that the students who are looking for mentors can identify individuals that, based on your background, they think could help them with their projects. So that's kind of the last piece of this, and that's supposed to be, I was supposed to have that Monday, but sometimes with the schools, things go a little slower than you plan. But I think we should have that soon. I'll push them on that. At that point, we've provided them with a listing of those individuals here who have expressed an interest. Also, we have a thicker list of CVs that were provided originally by Jim, and so there's some individuals there that aren't on our list, so we're going to expand the outreach to anyone who over time has expressed an interest in this. So I would hope that by the time we meet next month, we've got some activity on this, and the letters have gone out and the guides have gone out. But it's a pretty exciting program for the university, and the student interest is great. And one of the groups I'm working with, one of the girls is majoring in golf. She wants to become a golf course management, so she's taken an entrepreneurship course. There's other individuals that are, have specific ideas. So it's fun working with 20 to 22-year-olds who are, all excited about what they want to do, and you can bring them some value. So that's where we stand, and hopefully we'll have more for you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Jim. Any questions for the team? I'll be very brief about the Hertz application. Thank you, Pete. A week ago, Wednesday, the Design Review Board reviewed this proposal, which had been publicized by Hertz prior to the meeting. But they hadn't talked to anybody about that. They just made up their mind and said, this is what we want to do. So when we learned about the proposal in the newspapers, we sent out an email to our list and our system through social media and that type of thing on Monday prior to the meeting on Wednesday. And when we asked people to submit their whether they liked it or they didn't like it, that type of thing, we were very neutral on the thing. Well, 437 people sent emails to the members of the Design Review Board. And the chairman of the Design Review Board said he spent a lot of time looking through all of them. He didn't get through all of them, but he said 97% of them were opposed to the painting of the facility in this respect. So it was pretty clear and we had about 100 people at the meeting. And as John indicated, the vast majority, I think there was one person that spoke in favor of this. But we even had an ex-employee of Hertz who had been with them for 35 years, who stepped up to the plate and said he opposed this. He had, in the course of his work with Hertz, had been to hundreds of different facilities, and none of them looked like it is, you know, that type of thing. It turned out that they had not even consulted their architects in doing this. It was their branding department that decided they were going to do the whole building in bright yellow. So this was a preliminary information meeting. And those always, that means there's no action going to be taken. And so now there will be 2 additional hearings on this matter, the first reading and the second reading, before the Design Review Committee will actually vote to decide whether or not they're going to approve this or some alternate proposal. But I think it was pretty clear to Hertz and to the ownership of the arena that this wasn't going to work, and that they need to come back with a different proposal. So we look forward to participating once again. But I thank all of you that sent emails on our behalf, but it shows that public opinion counts on these kinds of things. Really very, very important. With that, Bob King's up next with his transportation report. Bob?
Thanks, Don. I just want to go back for a moment and touch on what we talked about last month. The approval by the council occurred just after our meeting. By now, I'm sure most of you are aware, the budget was accepted and the 62-acre purchase was approved, and that's going forward. So the capital improvement plan and the budget for the village is in place, and the purchase is on its way. You'll all recognize this slide. I use it every month. This is the AIM study. And I will say what I said last month. The AIM study is still where it was. There is some discussion between the developers, the staff at the county, reviewing the input that was made by AIM to decide what they do next. I'm told that hopefully we'll have something within a month. I told you that last month. I also did something else. I provided a rundown on the 4 communities that were included in the AIM study. One of them I misspoke. I had gotten information from county on the Pepperland Ranch project. I had indicated that zoning had not been submitted. Zoning has been submitted and has been approved. So they have both the overlay approval and the zoning approval to build 700 units on that property. What they don't have at the moment is a developer. You know, the owners of the property basically went out and took care of getting the approvals made. Now they need somebody to go ahead with the project. They'll probably sell it. That has not been announced yet. The next thing I wanted to touch on quickly, and I know that we're running out of time today, is the 2040 plan of the MPO. The Metropolitan Planning Organization is mandated by the Federal Transportation Administration. And what they do is the MPO looks at and recommends what improvements are needed over a long-range plan to make sure that the mobility of all of us and the movement of freight is done effectively. Their mission statement, you can read for yourself. It's basically straightforward. The Lee County Board of Commissioners are on that committee along with members of the incorporated areas. I think our member right now is Jim Bosch, is the representative. It's updated every 5 years. What we do is the 2040 plan is in place now. The 2045 plan will be starting very shortly. The MPO will set out a group of guidelines that says these are the things that we need to be looking at over the next 25 years to make sure that we have an effective system of transportation. The 2045 plan that they'll be starting on will be adopted in December of 2020. What's going to be different? You know, for the last 40 years, there has been very little change in the automobile that most of us drive. They're individually owned. They're powered by an internal combustion engine. They carry 4 to 7 people, and we're all stuck with maintaining them. And then they put new roads in. Every time we start to get big advances in the number of people who live here, we make the roads wider. That can't be sustained. What's going to happen over the next period? I'm sorry, let me finish with this one. What's going to have to happen is we're going to make a total departure. And the ground rules for the preparation of the 2045 plan are not going to be like they've been in the past. We're going to start to now look at things like changing how the automobile is driven. Actually, there had been a proposal made that I listened to. It was a gentleman from University of California, Davis, gave a presentation at MIT. And he said that there are going to be 3 revolutionary activities over the next, and he said 20 years, which would be within the scope of our 2045 plan, that are going to involve the electrification. Cars are no longer going to be driven by internal combustion engines. They're going to be driven by electricity. How that electricity is going to be provided is still a question. It could be a fuel cell. It could be batteries. That's to be determined. They're going to be automated. And hear what he's saying by automation, and we're already starting to see the beginnings of it with crash avoidance, driver assisted. You're going to start to see total automation. Automation from the standpoint of the whole system is going to be computerized. You're going to be able, they're saying, to order an automobile, have it come, provide you with service. You won't own one anymore. We can eliminate the need, they're saying, to pay for insurance, to pay for the vehicle, to pay for its maintenance. We can get better utilization of our roads if we can have more autonomy in the vehicle to where it can drive itself, which is, and then out of that naturally will come the, what they're calling pooling. Pooling is transportation on demand. You're going to be able to identify, I want to go to Corporation Park for the day. Car's going to come pick you up, take you there. That car will leave. It's not yours, and it's being continually used. It's a lot of efficiency as far as the roads are concerned. We may find out that we don't have to do all of this widening. We'll be able to get closer spacing. It's going to be safer. It's going to be less expensive. They're talking about costs per mile in the area of 15 cents as opposed to 55 cents where you are today. So a significant reduction in cost. But these are some of the exciting things that are going to be looked at over the next 20 years. That isn't going to happen tomorrow, but we all need to start to think about it, because one of the biggest deterrents to having all of this nice technology implemented is our internal inertia system that says, I don't want to do that. I don't trust that computer. No. They're going to do the technology. We're going to have to accept it and take advantage of it. So I just wanted to give you a little flavor about what's going to be happening. I'll give you more as we go forward, probably over the next several years, as to how this program is developing. Any questions about it? Good. Yeah.
Is the rail trail thing and the using the rails to move us north and south, is that in your committee or somebody else got that?
Rails and trails is somebody else.
Okay, who's that? Anybody on the ECCL working then?
Basically, Nick Betos and what's his name? I can't think.
The mayor, Benita, whoever.
Yeah, no, the vice mayor.
Well, but,
Benita.
you know,
2 of them are working on
The rail
it.
trail, yes, but the idea of using the railroad itself to move people north and south, to me, that's a transportation thing.
No question about it.
So.
Yeah, yeah. And the effort between Benita and Estero has been moving ahead and will be part of what the MPO They've been working on that for quite some period of time. They're very favorable toward the use of that rail line and right away.
I think in terms of this kind of thing, Mark, they're thinking about the Rails and Trails program as more of a short-term activity, something that could be done over the next 10 years or so, as opposed to being included in the 25-year program. And it is moving forward.
And it's funded separately by the state. It's a different entity in the state rather than the transportation department. With that, we got to go ahead, Pete.
Could the representative of Commissioner Pendergrass's office give us an idea why the Corkscrew Road study is approaching a year and a half late? Any help?
I mean, I can get Commissioner Pendergrass to reach out to you.
Oh, please, it's been a year and a half and there's so many important things that are left to be determined. And at the minimum, I'm a Lee County taxpayer. It's a $315,000 study that seems to be going nowhere.
Bob, do you talk to Doug Muir regularly? Bob?
I can't hear you probably.
Bob?
I'm sorry.
Do you talk to Doug Muir regularly from county management?
I speak to Doug. Actually, the administrator of that particular program is Andy Getch. And I speak to Andy religiously every month.
Okay. I'll get the information.
Can you feed it back to Don so Don can share it then?
Sure.
The AIM study, let him feed it back to you or Bob or somebody.
Bob
I'll send it
is
to Bob.
meeting with the people at the county, I think, this week, aren't you?
Actually, we're working on getting it set up. Yeah, it's going to be both the East Corkscrew Alliance Group, those folks who all live along Corkscrew, and ECCL are in the process of trying to set up a meeting with Doug Muir and with Randy Searcy, basically to talk about the implementation now of the approved widening of Corkscrew Road. Start to learn more about the details, because some of the things that were mentioned, Commissioner Kiker had said that we would see complete streets concepts start to be integrated into that improvement. And what we wanted to do was get together with them to start to understand what those improvements were going to be and when.
Thanks. Lowell Gerson, who is the chairman of our health committee, is traveling, so he asked me to give his report. It'll be very brief. But the health committee is working on getting Estero certified as a safe community. And there is a national certification process that you have to go through. It's largely data-driven. So there's what they do is try to determine what are the factors that are influence the safety of the community. And once they've done that research, and there's a lot of that data is already available, it just needs to be appropriately assembled and then studied. And then from there, then they try to begin to develop some remedies. And so they have so far the Lee County Injury Prevention Coalition, which includes Lee Health and the Trauma Center, the Sheriff's Department, the MPO, Bike Ped Lee, and Safe Kids. All of those different organizations, in addition to the village and the fire district, are coordinating and participating in this process. So we'll be moving, the committee will be moving ahead with this, providing the leadership to get Estero designated as a safe community. Not a lot of cities in the country that are yet certified. And so it's something that, again, is, you know, you can hang on the wall and advertise as something that is unique about your community, and uniquely good, of course. With that, we'll move along, and Pete, you've got environmental report.
I had the slide up last week and last month, and the next one, this is the Florida House and the Florida Senate districts. I'm not going to spend any time on this. If you have any questions about which of these districts you live in, see me right afterwards, and I'll go through these drawings with you, so you can get a better idea of who you're voting for. Secondly, Corkscrew Crossing is going before the Estero Planning and Zoning Board, and it's been postponed yet again, now October 23rd. It was the 16th, but they postponed it another week. In terms of the mines, Troyer Brothers Mine and Old Corkscrew Plantation Mine, both of them have had their zoning hearing complete. We are waiting for the zoning hearing examiner to issue her report of recommendation whether to approve or reject the rezoning of those two parcels for those mines. I don't suspect that we'll get any answer from her before the election. That is all I got. Any questions?
Okay. With that, Jim Tatulis is next with the community planning report.
As you all know, the council voted to purchase the property, the 62 acres, and now I just want to bring you an update as to what's happening. After they authorized the purchase of it, now the process of buying it is taking place. And there's something of this nature. There's a lot of technical glitches that are included in it, and so they're working those things out. Hopefully they'll get the process completed by the end of October, and if they do that, then they'll be working with the paperwork and getting everything completed so that it will be closed after the 1st of January. So that the actual ownership of the processing of the property will be taking place sometime in January. At that time, when the village actually has ownership of the property, they will institute an effort to go out and seek a land planning consultant. And then at that time, there'll be public hearings and there'll be input from everybody to determine what you'd like to see on the property and how you'd like to see it being developed. And that would take some time to go through that process next summer. And so actually anything that would actually be done with that property would not even be close till sometime the end of next year. So it's just a long process to get it all done, but it's very complicated. The only thing that I'd like to say is that as soon as the village authorized the purchase of it, the developers came out of the woodwork and wanted to know if they could buy it. So it wasn't worth it before, but then as soon as the village bought it, authorized purchase of it, everybody else came out and wanted to see if they could stick their noses into it. But things are going forward, and once again, we thank everybody for participation because our efforts really made a big impact on having the village support buying this piece of property, and we're looking forward to it taking its natural course. Thank you.
Any questions for Jim? Finally, Bob Lenish, our treasurer, is on his way back to Estero from his summer home. And Linda, who usually subs for him, I had to go to the doctor this morning, so I'm the third up. Bottom line is that all of our communities have paid their dues this year. We continue to have expenses of about $1,000 a month, $1,100 in that neighborhood. And we still have about $9,000 in the bank. The bottom line is we need to increase our revenue. We've been working on a social media advertising program for some period of time, and I think we're making some progress, and hopefully I can give you a good report about that in another month or two. So that our revenue, right now our annual revenue from dues are about $12,000. And we're running probably total expenses for the year, probably about $18,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we have a deficit of about $6,000, $7,000, something like that. it won't be hard to fill that gap with social, with using social media promotion. And I feel confident that we'll be able to do that. But at this stage of the game, we're still working on getting that shaped up. So with that, do you have any questions or comments here? Those of you who stayed throughout this whole long meeting. Mark?
How are we coming with the one zip code for Estero? I thought Francis Rooney mentioned that in our candidate screening meeting or something.
Nick Bato's been the one that's been working on that most of the time. I don't think there's anybody that's optimistic about it.
He definitely is not overly optimistic.
Yeah, that just, the post office is an independent entity. It's not part of the federal government, even though it's greatly subsidized by the government. But I can tell you from having worked on this issue for 15 years, that congressmen and all of those folks, we had 2 congressmen that spent a lot of time on that, tried to get it done, and it just didn't get done. The post office basically makes determinations about what your zip code is going to be based upon where their post offices are located, how many trucks they can handle, and the service area that they can handle. And so it's all worked backwards from their facilities. We worked for a long time to try to get the post office on Three Oaks Parkway. And as you know, the original post office up there on Broadway. Well, they built a post office there, but if you notice, there's no trucks there. And that was going to have 50 trucks when it was originally proposed and designed. But they end up leasing all of their post offices. There's a mechanism where they don't own them. They just lease them, you know, that type of thing. But they basically determine where they're going to be located and all that kind of stuff, and what their capacity is going to be. And unfortunately, we just don't have enough post offices in our physical area, within our boundaries, that have a capacity for handling a lot of deliveries. So,
Yeah, but we got 4,000 new homes going out east, and they didn't know about that when they built that facility.
Everybody,
Talk to the post office.
Yeah.
Well, they don't even return.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, good luck on that.
We have so many other problems that we can solve, you know, and can address. You know, there are only so many hours in the day. But, other questions or comments? Yeah.
On behalf of the pioneers of Southwest Florida, the Spring and Estero, I'd like to thank Bob King for bringing up the importance of the Future Weeks Fish Camp to this community, and we support all the support from Estero as well as William and Benita. Thank you, Bob.
And we're going to be putting out an invitation to all of our 4,000 people that are on our email list, plus our social media contacts, for the meeting on the 18th. And all of them, I think, know where we come from in terms of Bob's presentation. So with that, thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you again next month.
Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye.